downtown Detroit recording live. Prepare yourself for a hoppy drive. If you're chilling at home, pop that growler and just kick back for the next 2 hours. It's the end of the week, so here's to the weekend. It's Better on Draft with Rob, Matt, Nick, and Ken.
That's right, it is Friday night, and the place to be, of course, is at betterondraft.tv. My name is Ken. Welcome to the Better on Draft podcast, episode 236. That means next week is going to be our 5-year anniversary. That's right, you have been listening to this stupid show for 5 years, or you've got 5 years worth of shows to catch up on, but I appreciate you coming on in and joining us in this journey. I am going to go around and introduce all of the hosts. We've got a full studio, and I'm going to start with Wendy. How are you, Wendy?
I'm fantastic. It has been a great week. Graham turned 82 this week.
Way to go, Graham.
We got to celebrate with her ice cream cake, sugar-free, everything. If you've ever made ice cream cake, it is a lot funner when you can just get it from Baskin-Robbins. I am drinking today, but I am not pulling a Nick because my niece and nephew are coming over after the show because we are spending the day tomorrow doing random acts of kindness with an event called the Kindness Rally. And I just wanted to take a minute to give them a little shout out because they are also in their 5th year. And they went from over 1,000 acts of kindness the first year to over 10,000 acts of kindness last year. And the creator, it's now an international program. There's other countries that are doing the event. So I just think it's a really awesome way to spend the day, especially with my 6 and 9-year-old niece and nephew. Check them out. It's thekindnessrally.org. I am drinking a Dragon's Milk Solera. So it's their Scotch ale, and I think it's fantastic.
Their release is tomorrow. So I am excited to get the whiskey for sure. I was trying to get them on into studio next week, but sadly that's not going to work. But don't worry, we got some fun guests that are going to be coming up soon, which you guys will know. Nick, what's going on? What are you drinking?
Yo. Doing what I normally do every Friday night. In the little glass, I got the Grand Armory None of Your Business. And from Witch's Hat, Black is Beautiful. So it's in the red line glass. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but yep. And it's got the shirt on, so got the Black is Beautiful from Witch's Hat in this one.
Awesome. Robert, how's it going?
It is going pretty good. Kids are behaving. I got some kids getting A's in this house, which is a nice thing to always hear and see. We're actually, unfortunately, I was hoping that this was going to be the week where I could announce the official adoption of our 13-year-old, but apparently something got screwed up with the paperwork. So that's going to have to hold off for a little bit again, unfortunately. But other than that, everything's been going pretty darn good. I've got a couple drinks in front of me right now. I've got a Snickerdoodle Stout from Eastern Market Brewing Company, and I also have a Sazerac from Valentine Distilling Company out of Ferndale, with some nice canned to-go cocktails, which is obviously one of the big things that have been hitting in Michigan lately, and kind of thankful that we have distilleries that are able to do this, because then they get to survive just as well as the breweries do. I was
going to ask you if you got that from Valentine themselves, or if that came from some type of bar or restaurant.
No, it was straight from Valentine. I was on my way home from Matt Bush's stomping grounds, because I had to go out there, and on the way home going into Ferndale, I stopped, called him up, and had a nice little curbside pickup to grab the cans.
Awesome. And last but not least, in regards to the regular host, Dan, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on? So what's Matt's stomping ground? Is it Soho? Because that would make a lot of sense.
St. Clair Shores.
Oh, I thought you were in Ferndale. I'm like, oh.
No, St. Clair Shores.
Oh, boy.
Terrible, I know.
What you drinking, Dan?
I'm pulling a Nick, but I'm going kind of hard today. mixing a little liquor and beer, and also the red line glass. I got a Bloody Mary.
Ooh.
Starting it off with that.
I guess shout out to Redline, new sponsor of our show. I'll
without even trying. And then I've got the old wet nose or the wet snout peanut butter stout from Sleepy Dog, one of my all-time favorites.
All right.
About to say they are doing they're fermenting racing fuel over there. Did you see that photo on their Facebook by any chance?
Over at Redline?
At Redline, they're doing racing fuel.
I did not know. But before I introduce one of our two guests, obviously he is a member of the Better on Draft staff. I am drinking a Uncle Nearest. My nice little rocks glass. It's in the Ken's Private Bar glass that I got. Just so you guys know, it's my private glass, so nobody else can use them. All 6 of them just for me. That just means I only have to wash once every 6 times. But our editor-in-chief, Ed Norton, how you doing? Welcome to the show. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me. It's good. Doing well.
What are you drinking?
I'm pulling a Nick. I'm sorry. I'm already drinking. But I'm drinking a Weech from O'Fallon. Bill got me on this. Bill's the map guy. And this was one of his favorite beers from earlier this summer. Weech from O'Fallon. It's a peach wheat beer. So I'm drinking that, trying to get rid of my summer stuff. And then I have the little glass of from Mountain Town. I have their Doppelbock. So I've been nursing this malty sweetness for the past week. So little bits here and there. But thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, you got the Red Line shirt on. So usually when we say Red Line, the same brewery over and over, that's because that's our guest. But no, our guest is a author. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us, I know you have 2 books, right?
I do. Yeah. Hey, I'm Jim Schleckser, and I've written a couple of books, one about CEOs and CEO effectiveness called Great CEOs Are Lazy, which everybody knew, but I'm the one that, put it out there. So,
Nice.
And then the most recent book, which is one I think we're going to spend some time on tonight, is Professional Drinking, which shockingly I have a copy here. So we'll just kind of hold it up. Professional Drinking. And it's a spirited guide to wine, cocktails, and confident business entertaining. We do spend some time on beer in there as well, but one day we'll actually get back into restaurants, and you'll kind of know your way around and feel comfortable and confident when you do, if you read it. So that's what it's about. And just real quick, I went wine, sorry, against the theme, but
that's okay.
Oh no, the 2013 Chianti Classico. And I could talk about that. But Chianti is one of my favorite wines, easy to drink all by itself and just awesome with food too. So cheers. Nice to be here.
We appreciate you coming on out. I guess the first question, and I'll lead off the interview. Why don't you kind of tell everyone what your definition of professional drinking? Because obviously, there's a lot of people who would think professional drinking is maybe what you see on Beer Fest, or drinking in glasses this size. But what is professional drinking? And talk to us about a little bit about the book and what prompted you to write it.
Yeah, no problem. It's with Oktoberfest around the corner, you'd think a lot of professional drinking, crushing beer cans on your head. But what I mean about that is when you go out to dinner with somebody and they know their way around the wine list and the cocktails and the beer, and they go, hey, you need to try this beer. It's awesome. I've had it. It's going to go great with what you're eating or drinking. And then when the wine list shows up, they're confident about picking something. Maybe even talking to a sommelier. And it's almost like the dog that didn't bark. With somebody who's a professional drinker, it's just like a really nice meal. Everything works. You had some tasty stuff. And you're like, man, I was great. And I'm not quite sure why it was. And you were in the hands of a professional drinker when that happened. And sort of why I wrote the book is, I work with CEOs. That's why I wrote the first book. That's sort of my business. And I'm working with these super confident, masters of their universe. And then you hand them a wine list, and the flop sweat starts and their hands start shaking. And I'm like, this is weird as heck that these amazing people who are like got everything going on and, a little piece of paper and they get all freaked out. And so I said, there's an opportunity to write something to maybe And they're not the only ones, obviously. It's not just CEOs, it's everybody. Like, it's just not a comfortable scenario. And, it should be. So hopefully that's what I'm trying to solve for is, you feel a little more comfy, more confident when you hit the restaurants again.
For me, having been in the restaurant industry for a little bit, building menus, and I'm talking building wine bar menus and seeing these long lists, these prices, as someone who doesn't drink wine on the regular, maybe once or twice a year, usually at weddings or something like that, or when it's, the only thing available, how would you talk to someone like me? How would I start to approach a wine menu?
Yep. So I'd go for some easy answers when I'd call them, lifesaver wines, if you will, just always good. And one of them is Chianti. Just, when I look down the list, go pick a bottle of Chianti. Doesn't matter what year, you'll be good to go. It'll go with whatever food you're eating pretty much. And it's yummy if you just drink it by itself. So that's me. I pick a real simple wine. The other option is Rioja, which comes from Spain. It's not on every menu, but a lot of them. Same deal. Yummy, delicious, not real expensive. You're not going to bust the bank. And it kind of goes with most meals. Now, having said that, the other technique, there'll be a third one, is wine by the glass. You go to most restaurants and they got a wine by the glass section. And those are like crowd pleasers. You know what I mean? They're designed to like hit the middle of the palate. Kind of everybody's going to like them. Not going to be too offensive one way or the other. I will say, you're never going to get a stunning wine in wine by the glass, but it's always good. And, either the GM tasted it or the sommelier tasted it. So there's no clunkers. They're all like good, solid choices. So if you don't know what you're doing, I'd say pick a wine by the glass and just go for it. Or you get the bottle of the same wine. It's a good trick. Or Rioja or Chianti, and you're good to go.
All right, I'm going to actually hand it over to Ed, who read your book, and I think he has a question or two he wants to ask you.
No, I just wanted to say, I thought the book, and I have my copy right here. I thought the book was, again, kind of what you were saying, kind of as someone who doesn't drink wine very often, can't really navigate or is nervous like that. That was me before I read it. But I found the book actually really easy to understand and grasp and that sort of thing. So Jim, hats off to you. You really wrote a good, easy to understand book, even for someone who's clueless like me. I guess my question is, as with our audience and then also as the beer drinker, why wasn't there more focus on the beer? Sorry, but
I knew the question was coming.
I'll yeah, because I did read the book, so it's just okay, I read the book. So where there was a little bit in the front, you went over the styles of beer and everything like that. So it was a good little refresher. But for someone who's trying to drink professionally with beer, how do I navigate that, and what does that look like?
Yeah, that I got to say that beer. There's another section I write, as I only do a chapter on cocktails, a chapter on beer. I was sort of short on a lot of that stuff and a little longer on wine. Because I guess I think about the sort of business, which just was centered around business. Beer, good starter, less so do people drink it all the way through the meal. And I got to be honest, even in the sommelier training that I took, we spent enough time to know beers and understand them, but pairing them through a whole meal, it's less common. Like, what do you pair with like a whitefish if you got beer as what you're trying to pair it with? And somms are not taught how to do that. Maybe Cicero, is that the sort of expert?
Cicero.
Yep.
They wouldn't maybe know, but a sommelier wouldn't know. So, I really went that way. And I got to say, in my experience of drinking for 30 years in business, I'll have a beer to start a meal, particularly like if I play golf and I'm a little thirsty and I want a beer, or they have an interesting beer menu, I'll try a beer first. But then I cut over to wine during the meal most times. So it's probably just because I didn't see it as much in that environment. And maybe that's a miss. Maybe maybe one of you needs to write, the business beer book, and say, hey, this works too. But it is a little less common, I'll tell you.
Well, one of the things that I kind of want to ask with what you were saying, because you're talking about businesses, you're talking about networking. Do you see that with the advent of all of these craft beers, the different styles, that a lot of people are more reaching out for beers during networking events where you might necessarily aren't doing any sit down dinner types, but you're doing where you're talking, you're moving from table to table, you're seeing everyone, because that's kind of what I gathered from what the book was about, was not only just entertaining, guests for a dinner for, someone who's coming in for a, for a specific event, but when you're going out to a networking event, like trying to traverse that way without looking like a slob.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, a networking event like at a brew pub or something where they got a great selection, you got a cool brewmaster that's being creative, and I think that's a super cool idea, and that'd be completely awesome and acceptable. But, it is a specialty thing because there is a crowd that doesn't, I know you guys aren't going to like this, but they're not beer people, right? They're just, I know, right?
Shocker.
There are two peoples in this world. There are people that like beer and there are people that are wrong, right? Isn't that how it goes?
I mean, I'm not going to never not say that again. Like that's definitely a slogan that I'm going to keep.
So I think, yeah, totally. But if you go to a normal, like a networking event, they got some not great wine and some not great beer. It's not, none of those are great choices. So, I'll actually go for a cocktail as often as not in that environment, just because I can pick a decent liquor and pick a decent mixer. And so,
well, let's real quick hit, you're going to a brew pub or a brewery. What kind of beer are you choosing? What style? What?
Yep. For me, and this is all personal preference, right? But, I like Pilsners, straight up clean, nice and refreshing. I'll drink an IPA once in a while, but when they get really hoppy and really bitter, and I know people that like geek on that, right? But it's just not me.
Those are the people that are wrong too. So
okay, there you go. So I'll drink wheat beers. I like wheat beers. I like amber ales or brown ales, like a Newcastle Brown if it's a bottle.
Oh yeah.
And then once in a while I'll go Guinness, a stout, nice and creamy, cream stout or something like that. So I'll mix it up. I like the double bock, like meal in a glass. Just personally, not my gig, but I may be in the wrong camp on that one too. So I don't know, but I'll mix it up a bit. And I'll start with a beer as often as I'll start with a cocktail. Just, mix it up, change it up, particularly because the beer scene, just like the mixology scene with cocktails where they got like wild stuff going on cocktails, same thing's going on in the beer scene. It's like been revolutionized in the last 10 or 15 years. So if you get a place that's working it in that, like, you're an idiot not to try something in my book. So I'll give it a go if I'm in a place like that, because you never know. They might have done something super cool. I will say the only downside about that is, let's say I go to a place and I drink something and I love it, right? It's like awesome. Then I go someplace else and I'm like, I can't have that again because that was that brewmaster, right? I got to go back there to get that particular item. So I don't like that part about it too much, but it is what it is.
So in terms of, and actually, I have my copies here as well. There you go. But I have my copy as well. So I have been going through it. Obviously, one of the things that you did say in there was that beer isn't the classiest drink. And I think you kind of went into it about, one brewmaster having the style that you want that's right, as opposed to another brewmaster who may not. Yeah. There doesn't seem like there's going to be ever that consistency from brewmaster to brewmaster who will make a Kolsch that tastes the same, that makes a lager that tastes the same. But do you ever see a point where beer can get as classy as the cocktails and the wines?
Yeah. And you're going to have to change public perception on that one. So one of the chapters I wrote about was what your cocktail says about you, right? So if I go to a business event and I got a margarita with, man, I am on vacation, right? I am, and if you go for a beer and a shot, you're like, it's just not done in business so much. So beer isn't there, but, and nobody would look at you sideways, but it is just less common. So I think as the craft of beer making changes over time and gets more and more enhanced and more complicated and interesting, I think it'll elevate people's opinion. And I think I think it's actually an age thing too, honestly. I think as there's a group that kind of grew up with the brew pub and the brewmaster, and as they go in, get older and start running the businesses, they'll go, "Hey, we're having beer," and they're like, "Okay." So this crowd, me, I kind of grew up with more cocktails and wine, and so that's how I think about it. Even though I like beer, I didn't grow up with it the way this kind of group is growing up with it. So I think maybe give it 10 or 15 or 20 years, and game on. It'll be a different conversation.
Gotcha. Now, I guess speaking of growing up and coming into this, I believe I read that your first experience into wine and spirits was with a 1982 Chateau Haut-Brion. I'm curious, tell me about that memory and how that shaped you into this world, this new world of or introducing us to professional drinking.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Chateau Haut-Brion is a Bordeaux. It's from France in the classic area. It's a red wine. And Haut-Brion is one of what they call first growth. It's one of the best. There's only 6 of them. It's one of the best of the best of the best of the best, right? And nowadays, probably a gajillion dollars a bottle. But and in 1982, that particular year, was one of the best years they'd had in like decades. And my dad had been given, for doing a really good job on something, a case of this wine. So we had a case of this 1982 Haut-Brion. And he would crack it open. When I was in college, I'd come back and he'd crack open a bottle. We'd have steak and Chateau Haut-Brion. Who knew? I mean, we should have hung on to it. But anyway, and it was just like magical. It was like everything, for me, it was everything wine should be. It had nice fruit and complexity, and it lasted forever on my tongue, and it paired with the steak like perfect, and like everything was elevated. Now I have to say, part of it was probably because I was home with my folks, and and I always think what you're drinking is enhanced by who you're with. It's always the whole scene, right? So I could be drinking a Coors Light, but if I'm having a great conversation with a buddy and it's awesome, it's pretty good beer, right? So that wine was like super enhanced because of that, and I almost went on a journey after that to have that same kind of experience of amazing conversation, fabulous wine, great food. And I struggled to find it. I just couldn't recreate that, the magic that was those evenings with my dad and that particular red wine. So over time, I learned more and more about wine. I became a certified sommelier, which I talk about in the book, which is hard-ish. And so I became a wine lover. I've had that wine one other time in my life, actually, and it was delicious. Not quite the same as with my dad, but pretty cool.
All right.
So that was what got me started on the wine journey.
And one of the rules that you'd also had in the book in becoming a professional drinker is to never get drunk. Now, I know, I guess I can speak for myself that I don't get there. I maybe have done that maybe 2 or 3 times in my lifetime. And I know some people will like to think otherwise, considering sometimes the lineup that I have on this show. Shut up, Nick. But I guess I'm thinking that for those who are enjoying it, they're enjoying it until they get to that point where they get drunk. I guess where does it get at that point when they get drunk as a professional drinker, where and how does that get lost?
Yeah. So, and by the way, I'm not against getting drunk, right? If I'm hanging out with my buddies and I'm not driving, game on, right? I mean, what the heck, right? But in business where you earn your living, like this is like sleeping with the boss's secretary. Like you just don't do it, right? Or those that might have thought about that, you just don't do that, right? So I say, look, just keep it under control. Have a few drinks, keep it under control. My rule there was about a drink an hour, and you should be pretty, that you shouldn't be drunk. And if you need to go hit a few more after everybody's gone home, hit the bar and have a few more, but just really keep it under control. Now, I will say, people that have known me for a while, they start reading the book and they go, Jim, I'm pretty sure I've seen you one or two past your nut. I'm like, okay, I'll admit it happens. Right. You'll notice the next chapter is what do you do when you have a hangover? So,
right, yes, I did see that.
I like the advice where you were like, show up. I think you said 15 or 20 minutes late.
Yeah.
Like so, the fashionably late, right? And then leave when you start to kind of see the sloshiness happen. I think that was good advice, and I always like to show up fashionably late because I'm usually just running late. So I guess I can now say, well, now I'm pulling one from the book, and I'm avoiding the onset and all that. So I thought that was a great piece of advice too.
Thanks. Yeah, I also the line I think I put in the book is those ideas that they put on the soggy cocktail napkins at 1 a.m. They're not going to understand what they are the next morning anyway. You didn't miss anything. You're good that you left a little bit early. So,
one other one that I have, which actually my lovely wife is in the chat right now, that she definitely pointed out that a bit of as we will definitely refer to Detroit royalty getting married back on October 13th, 2016, being us, of course, that we had our wedding in, I don't know if you've been to Detroit's Eastern Market, but we had our wedding there. And one of the things that we definitely had to plan was the alcohol and making sure, the beer and the wine and the champagne was there and flowing for everybody to enjoy. The one thing I have a question of is being a professional drinker more about being entertained or being the entertainer?
I think it's almost always about being the host. I mean, you want to be a good guest, right? There's a line from the Air Force Academy. The first year or so, they're followers. And they go, you can't be a good leader unless you know how to be a good follower. And I think you don't know how to be a good host unless you know how to be a good guest. So they kind of go together for me. But I was really thinking about hosting. How do you show people a good time? Like your idea of, plenty of wine, beer, champagne, quality stuff. It's casual. It's for fun. It's your friends. Drink up, have a great time. I talk a little bit later in the book about how to make sure you have enough. But, as long as nobody's driving and they're going to hurt themselves, who cares? Like that's okay. Liquor and beer and wine, it's to loosen things up socially and have a good time with your friends. So it's all good. But in business, it does loosen things up. It allows you to build relationship, but you can't quite go there. You know what I mean? Not like at a wedding or something. So,
right.
I'm a little more about being a host, but you got to be a good guest too.
Right. All right. I got one more, and then I'll hand it off to Wendy here. Just kind of keeping with, obviously there's a lot of focus in the book with cocktails and wine. But one of the parts that you talk about in the book about wines is, the difference between a $10 and a $100 bottle of wine. Yep. And obviously when it translating into beer also has that flow of price points, whether for locals around here going to 734 Brewing in Ypsilanti, where a beer could be $4, as opposed to going to Witch's Hat, where you could get a barrel-aged beer that may cost $9 or $10. Now, as far as wine is concerned, I'm not shy. I am a fan of $3 Chuck. I will go to Trader Joe's and I will get a Shiraz or a Sauvignon Blanc. And I have no issues with that. And I have no issues with that with my wedding. If I had actually remembered to bring the boxes to the wedding. So they're all in the basement right now. But is a professional drinker who is not a sommelier going to really care if it's a $500 or $500 bottle of wine? And what makes that price point so high, especially when I think a favorite of yours, another 1982 bottle of Chateau Mouton Rothschild, which I saw is going on a site for $3,500.
Yep. Yeah, and I need a friend to buy it for me because I'm not buying it for myself.
Oh, Rob will buy it for you.
There you go. Perfect. So early in the book, I talk about the fact that like ice cream and pizza, there is no bad wine. like even not the greatest pizza in the world is pretty good, and not the greatest ice cream's pretty good. And same with wine. So look, $2 chuck with the right environment and you're having a good time, game on. I got no problem with that. That's awesome. But, and sort of then you go to, well, why would I ever pay more? Well, you should have a different experience in the quality of the wine if you spend more money. So it's what I talk about is a PQ, price to quality ratio. So if I spend more, it darn well better be better. And then you go, well, what if I can't taste it? Then I go, well, then don't spend more money, right? If you can't taste it, don't spend it. But I'll give you sort of the things that professionals look for in a better wine. And there's a mnemonic, which is BLIC, B-L-I-C, B-L-I-C. So is it in balance? The acid and the tannins, and it's kind of pleasing. L, how long does it last? After I taste it, how long does it stay on my tongue and I get these flavors unwrapping themselves? Or is it kind of boom, boom, in and out? So think like Coors Light versus a barrel-aged, lovely, it's going to kind of hang in there for a long time on your tongue, right? Intensity is the next. Is it sort of, I got to really stick my schnoz in there to get anything out of the wine? Or do I go, oh, wow, I get, cherries and blackberries and leather, and I get all these cool things going on. It's got intensity. Same thing when I drink it. It's got a lot of nice flavors and intensity. And the last one is complexity. You like I said, Coors Light, it's like one note, boom, boom, right? Some of the more sophisticated wines, it's got, caramel and chocolate and all these nice flavors unraveling, and it's got complexity that goes on. Same thing in wine. It's got complexity. So if I spend more money on a wine, it better have better balance, length, intensity, and complexity, or I didn't spend my money so good. If I spend $3, $3 chuck, it's probably more or less in balance. It's going to be limited length, limited intensity, and then it's not so complex. It's a simple wine. It's kind of easy drinking. So that's, I pay more, I better get more, right? That's the curve. Now, $3,600, I'm not sure that I could ever spend. I don't know what that wine does for you that makes it worth that kind of money personally. But if a friend served it, I'd sure drink it. So,
right. I have a question. You had said earlier, what beer would you pair with a white wine? Personally, and I am not a professional, I have thought about doing the Cicerone courses, but I would pair it probably with a Belgian Saison or a farmhouse ale, something like that would pair with the flavors. What type of wine would you pair with a whitefish?
So generally they say, white fish and white wine, particularly if it's like a sole or, white kind of flaky, not real fishy fish. You want, because it's a delicate flavor, you want a delicate wine. Reds will kind of overpower it. And so you go to white. So for me, a Chablis, which is Chardonnay grapes grown in France, or possibly a Riesling, an upstate New York Riesling, not sweet, like a dry Riesling, which they make, be yummy with fish, delicious with fish. The other thing to look at, though, when you're pairing like that is what's the sauce, right? So if I had a fish and it's got like a nice light butter sauce, then I'm in that Chablis category because it's delicate. But if they put like pesto crusted almond, I might go for like a really heavy white or even a light red with something like that, like a Beaujolais, which is a nice, light, easy drinking red. So the protein's important, but what they put on it also can kind of move you one way or the other in terms of what you might pair with it. So the answer is it depends. So white wine, if I didn't know anything else, if I knew what they put on top of it, I might move a little bit heavier.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've spent the better part of the last 2 decades as a part of a young person's, and I say young because I don't feel young anymore, leadership training organizations. We did a lot of networking, and I found myself on the state board for a period of time. So I had to travel all over the state. And of course, it's a 21 and up group. So there's a lot of drinking involved. I have noticed that more recently, we've started seeing more craft beers available at those events.
Cool.
But back in the day, it was a lot of wines and liquor. So one of the suggestions that I was given when I had a really long drive after an event or something along those lines is to start with a cocktail that I can then start requesting water or sodas, so it looks like I'm still drinking that cocktail. What is your opinion of that tip?
Yeah, you must have read the book because I talk. It's the dilution solution, right? So when I'm in that environment, I'll drink rye and ginger ale, whiskey and ginger ale, basically, right?
That's what I would do too.
Right, and my first one's normal, and then when I sidle up, I go, hey, make it a light pour. And then the third one, I might cut over to just ginger ale. But it looks like I'm drinking with the guys and the gals the whole time.
Right.
And I'm drinking ginger ale, and I'm good when it's time to hop in the car and drive where I got to go. So you can manage your consumption and still hang with the crowd if you want to. And I love that approach. You can do it with the gin and tonic too. You can do it with a lot of drinks, but like a mixed drink, not a martini. Like a water martini doesn't really work for me, but a mixed drink where you cut the liquor out, I'm all in. I think that's a great move. That's a really good move. So, yeah.
I think that's one of the hardest things, especially for me when a handful of years ago when I was doing a lot of networking events trying to find a new job, is that a lot of these people are drinking and they're drinking hard and everyone wants to have a drink with you because they're like, hey, let's talk over a beer. And then you go to the next person who's, trying to recruit you and you're like, hey, let's grab a beer. And one of those things is you can't hide behind those beers. And there was a handful of times where I'm just like, wow, I'm really feeling this. And it got to the point where I would have a water and you could see some of the looks people are giving you. Do you think that's a culture that can change over the next 10, 15 years with the new, class of drinkers, new class of professionals? Or do you think, because I think a lot of it is, the old boys club, have another drink, have another drink, have another drink. What do you think like the future holds for that type of mentality?
Yep. And I think this is another generational thing. I think, beers and wine and just drinking generally is somewhat less popular as you go down in the age group. So I think it will shift away from that. I mean, they talk about the 3 martini lunch, and I'm like, I'd go back to my office and take a nap after 3 martinis. I don't know who can survive that. Thank God that's gone. But
it still happens. It still happens. I know quite a few.
Really?
Oh. Yeah.
I'm going to be honest, and speaking that Dan is, in the bottom right of my corner. Back when I was working second shift, he would get off work and I'd be having my lunch at 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, and I'd go join him for 3-4 beers and then head back to the office. And,
wow.
That's not the first. I used to work over in a city called Rochester Hills by us, and we had a bar called Muldoon's, and I would sit down a pitcher of beer for lunch and go back to work. And I also think that was age too. Like, I think at that time I was drinking 4, 5, 6 nights a week, and not like aggressive drinking, but I'd go bowling, so I'd have a few drinks. I'd go to karaoke, so I'd have a few drinks. So I was never getting wasted, but I was just drinking constantly to where at that time, like, I wasn't getting hangovers too, which is kind of going into my next question. Let me
just finish the beer thing real quick.
Oh yeah, sure, go for it.
I'm a fan of the beer diaper in that environment, right? So, you wrap the napkin, you got your little beer diaper going on, and you nurse it. I mean, you got to be able to control your consumption somehow. So I finished one, and I might have drank a third of my beer. I hit the other one. You want a beer? I already got one. I'm good, and they don't know if I've been nursing it or not because you can't really see the beer go down. So it's sort of like the dilution solution is the beer diaper solution, just to hide your rate of consumption, and as long as the people change, like you're describing, nobody really knows how much you drank, and you get to choose like your pace. So
I think that's my problem is that I was just never able to control my pace. I would just, I wouldn't chug it, but I just drink casually, like while I'm listening, take a sip and take a sip. There's so many times where at my last job where I would just, we'd be at some type of event. I remember I went to a wine gallery or a wine pop-up opening in Boston, and they gave me a wristband. And mind you, I'm not driving because I don't have a car. I'm, taking public transpo. So I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's have fun. So the problem also is that now as the customer, they're like, oh, I want you to try this wine. I want you to try this wine. I want you to try this wine. And I remember that next morning because I hurt really, really bad. What is your personal hangover solution?
Well, one is water. Like I do a drink and a water, a drink and a water, a drink and a water all night long. Now, I pee like crazy that night, but I find it helps me because one of the things is beer is a diuretic, alcohol is a diuretic. So it takes water out of your body. And that's part of why you feel like hell the next day is you've been dehydrated. So if you keep pumping water, it helps the dehydration a little bit. Yeah, there you go. Right here, right? So I'll drink to that.
I guess I gotta get a bit of water now. Jeez.
During the research for the book, I found out that B12 vitamin is also a winner. So you pregame with B12 because that vitamin apparently is an essential chemical in processing alcohol. And when you're drinking alcohol, the diuretic, you pee it all out and you deplete it. So you got to jack it up, and therefore there's enough to process the alcohol. Same thing like when you get home at night, hit a B12. Now your pee will be orange because you'll have too much B12, but don't worry, you're okay.
Time to invest in some 5-hour energy.
I was going to say, in my head,
but for food, I'm in the protein, carbs, and fat category for me. So I talk about it in the book. I make like a poor man's spaghetti carbonara. Cheese and some egg and a bunch of pepper on some old pasta. And for me, it just takes the edge off, takes the shakes out, and I can go crawl to the couch.
I have a question.
Go for it, Nick.
So for the last 6+ months, we have been in this COVID working from home mode.
Yeah.
And restaurants clearly aren't getting the business as they used to. Do you see, I guess, is there a home version of the professional drinking from home in your experience? And do you see us, like you talked about it before the show started about getting back into the restaurants. Do you see us getting back there, hopefully in the near future, with all things considered?
Yeah, I mean, like depending on the state, you can go to restaurants, they're 50% or whatever. And, just so the restaurants survive, I hope they at least go to 50% because I don't know how much the restaurants are surviving right now. And when winter comes, and we can't eat outside anymore, I'm like, I don't know what they're going to do. And it's going to be a dang shame because some good places are not going to make it, right? So, and here's the other problem. They make most of their money on liquor sales. It's the secret of a restaurant. They don't make that much money on the food. They make all their money on the beer and the wine and the liquor. And so they gotta sell liquor. They really do. So takeout, where people aren't buying the liquor is not a great move, not a great look for the restaurant. So I do think we're partially back already. And I'd say, if you're comfortable, go to a restaurant. I've been a couple of times to restaurants and, they're pretty safe about keeping people well apart. Your people have masks. I mean, I didn't feel unsafe in that environment. But I do think in the next, don't quote me, but let's say 12 months, right? And, maybe a vaccine's required or whatever. But I do think we get back into the restaurants. I do think we get back to something that looks more normal, more like it used to look when we're feeling comfortable being around humans without masks on. And I can't imagine that it's going to look like this in 2 years. So I do think we get back in the restaurants. I do think we get back to entertaining and hanging out with friends and bars and restaurants. And I got to tell you, I sure hope so because I'm tired of this. I really am.
Everybody is.
Where are you located, Jim? Where are you at? We're all in Michigan and Dan's in Arizona, but where are you at?
I'm just outside of Washington, D.C., in the burbs, although I got a lot of business in Michigan, so I spent a lot of time there. And it's a great food and entertaining and restaurant city. I mean, an amazing city. I mean, we got everything you can imagine. And I used to enjoy going to those places, and now, not so much. So looking forward to it with friends and whatnot.
So you educate with, how to do professional drinking, how to entertain. What are some of like more interesting clientele that you've ever taken on in showing the etiquette that or in the things that go with professional drinking? Like what are some like off the wall kind of people, or are they strictly just business professionals? That
Besides us, right?
Besides us, yeah.
Let's see. So we worked with the CEO of OxyClean for a while. That was kind of cool. This is years ago, but when they had Billy Mays, right? And that was fun. We had a guy that made cakes for a while. So he made like cakes for restaurants. So whenever you go to dinner with him, he's like, we're having every dessert they have on the menu. Like every single time you were eating dessert. And he'd like have one spoonful of everything just to like, it's research, right? So I also worked briefly with a distillery. I was making bourbon. That was really interesting because starting up a bourbon operation is a tough gig because who wants to drink fresh bourbon, right? You want aged bourbon.
Well, that would be moonshine. So, yeah.
Well, right. It's moonshine, which there's a place for that. But, so basically the first 5 years, he's making products, sticking it in casks, and he doesn't sell anything. I mean, it's a tough gig. So that was pretty interesting to work with him and the branding and the bottling and all that stuff. So yeah, and then unfortunately a lot of them are really boring. So stuff you'd be like, interesting, not really.
I know. I was going to say, I know Dan has a question for you.
I do, because I want to go back to this wine and food pairing since, with your training and hearing you say, you enjoy the lower dollar amount stuff as well as the high end. So what are we going to pair with this? I'm interested because I'm a big fan. I love, Mad Dog's a great wine. It's some of my favorite wine out there.
Mad Dog 2020, 20% alcohol.
Yeah. What are we matching up with Banana Red Mad Dog? What kind of food are we pairing that with?
Banana Red Mad Dog with a Big Mac you found in a dumpster.
Everyone's reaction to that question was amazing. You didn't even have to say anything.
Oh, God.
I wonder how that would be. Maybe not out of a dumpster, but we might have to try that one night.
This looks horrible. I didn't even know what it was until Dan said something about it. I'm looking up pictures on Google.
What is the flavor? I'll actually give it a real go. But what's the flavor on it?
Banana red.
Banana red. And what's the red? Is like cherry?
I think it's just banana. I've never personally had this one.
Oh, okay.
I was going to ask about the red grape because that's the one I've had, but I saw this. I'm like, I got to know now.
All right. So I would pair that with banana cream pie. Like and like. I'll match it. Instead of contrasting it, I'll match it. So I'll go with a nice, creamy, delicious banana pie with a graham cracker crust. It's sweet. The alcohol, here's the problem. With 20% alcohol, that is hot stuff. Yeah. So you need something to take it down, which would be a creamy kind of thing. And that's where I think the banana cream kind of pie would offset it, and they'd be kind of, and it might actually work. Might.
All right. Yeah, it might. That's a good choice.
Are you going to try it after the show, Dan?
Gotta go find some Mad Dog.
No.
There is a shirt on Etsy you can buy that says "I survived 2021, so I can do it again," and it's like a landscape photo of a bunch of Mad Dog bottles.
Oh boy!
So
I promised myself that once I was allowed to buy my own liquor, I would never drink that stuff again.
I honestly never heard of it until Dan actually said something about it. And I'm just looking at photos on Google Image, and it's like nothing good at all.
Man, Mad Dog.
There's nothing good results from it.
No,
thank you for warning me.
Mad Dog is so old that it's possible that both Dan and myself may have been conceived after drinking a bottle of that.
It's possible. It's possible.
Yeah, you make a lot of bad decisions after drinking Mad Dog. You're like, hey, let's go for it.
Yeah.
Hey,
let's punch that cop.
Yeah, exactly.
Daniel.
So before we kind of close it up, I'm gonna make sure to see if anybody else has any final questions. But for me, the one thing that I kind of want to ask, when you go out and you're drinking, is there any semblance to the rules of liquor before beer or beer before liquor, or do you think that's just kind of old wives' tale?
I kind of think there's something to it. I write about it in the book, but yeah, I mean, beer before wine, fine. Wine after, what is it? Beer after what?
Beer after wine, you're fine. Wine after beer, you feel queer. And
yeah, that's it. Wine after beer,
as you point out in that book, that is not going in the direction that people would, I guess, politically correct people would think that is going.
Right, you go beer then wine, and that's not the right order, right?
Right.
Yeah, and that's the order I drink it in too. But I think if you drank a bunch of beer and then put a higher alcohol thing on top of it, I think you're just asking for it personally. You got kind of a full belly of the beer, throw some shots or wine on top of it. I don't know. I think that might be a mistake. Look, these old wives' tales are around for a reason because a lot of them are true, so I'm not going to challenge that one too hard personally.
There is something that we kind of haven't really touched on. I know we're running a little bit out of time, but we haven't touched on the other major hard alcoholic groups of mead, cider, and now hard seltzer. Do you see those fitting into a professional drinking setting, or do you kind of qualify them where you have beer right now and you see them later moving up?
I think hard cider in particular, totally acceptable. You get peach or apple and there are hard ciders out of France that are delicious. I mean, and super classy and awesome. So I'm all over ciders for sure. I think they are dead center. Having said that, you probably can't drink it across a whole meal because of the sweetness level. It's pretty sweet. And so it won't work with that fish we were talking about or a steak or, the hard ciders are up and comers. Or sorry, the seltzers are up and comers. And so I think they're a great starter, a little lighter, yummy, delicious. I think they're a winner. And what was your other one? Mead?
Mead and hard seltzer.
Hard seltzer, I'm in on mead. I just haven't seen it that often. I mean, I think not that many bars serve it, right? Isn't that fermented honey?
Yeah. So in Michigan, specifically, we have a lot of mead makers.
Wow.
At one point we had 3 within like a mile and a half of each other.
Wow.
So I think
we're winning too.
We see it a lot, and Bee Nectar, which has been here for I think 15, almost 20 years now. So we've had mead makers, including Schramm's and Bee Nectar, here making mead all the time. So I think we in Metro Detroit see it a lot different than a lot of other people. But I also think it's just one of those things where I don't think we'll see a trend of it, but I just wanted to ask because it's a little more on the wine side as opposed to on the beer side.
How much sugar is left in? Is it still sweet?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
I'd say so, yeah.
I'll tell you what, that sounds like a great way to finish a meal. Sometimes I'll skip dessert and I'll go to a sweet alcoholic, a port or a sauterne. But like if they had mead on the menu, I'd be like, I'm going to give that a go as like an ender, a little sweet something at the end of the meal, a little alcohol. I think mead would be an awesome way to finish up a meal. Like just settle out your belly a little bit and a little something. That sounds great. I think it's kind of regional though. I mean, I don't see that as I travel the country, that's a big thing. So, but, and having said that, it's like when you travel internationally, if they go, oh, we got this great mead and it's kind of local. I'm like, I am in. Like whenever there's a chance to try the local goods, whatever they are, give it a go every time. I mean, life's too short not to. So I'm going to try that next time I'm up in Michigan for sure.
Wendy, I'll let you finish it out.
So as an event planner, I'm just wondering if you were on an event that had, we'll say a limited budget, not no budget, what alcohol would you choose to serve to a group of people who are 21 to 40?
Yep. So, I mean, again, this depends on money, and I talk a little bit about it, but I'd have a basic white, a basic red, probably wholesale, $10 a bottle, maybe.
Costco?
Sure. I'd probably have a couple of beers. I might have a specialty beer just for fun, so there's something it's like a specialty cocktail, but a specialty beer would be a fun and cheaper than alcohol, right? So that could be a nice way to go. And then I'd have a basic bar, like rack level, not call level, gin, vodka, whiskey, something like that. And, so we'll make a couple and then some sodas. So sodas, 3 or 4 liquors, but rack level, not call level. So like when I go to the shore in New Jersey sometimes, and there was this gin and vodka called Old Barney, which is the name of the lighthouse. I mean, it was as basic God. Like I'd have Old Barney on the, as the liquor, like behind, don't look at what I'm pouring kind of gin, right? And that would be my move. So, a light beer, a Corona or something like that. And then a fun beer, a red and a white, basic, maybe Costco level, and that'd be my basic bar setup for an event like that, where I was trying to keep a lid on the spend.
Yeah.
When you get to more money, we go to maybe a few more wines, call liquors, bigger selection of beers and stuff. That's when you got more money at play.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right, Jim, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. You have 2 books out. What are the names of them, and where can we get them?
Well, the one to buy right now is Professional Drinking. So you just go, there you go. So you've got an advanced copy. It's got the little stripy thing, do not sell, right? So Professional Drinking, it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble. You can actually order it from your local bookstore if you want to. They can get it for you if you don't like Amazon, like Big Bad Evil Amazon for some reason. But that's the move. Available a Kindle or digital format, paperback, and we'll have an audio book out within a couple of weeks as well. I also did Great COs Are Lazy. That's available on Amazon. It's a little more of you kind of got to be running a company or wanting to run a company to buy that one. This book, good for everybody, good for Christmas, good for your grandma. Buy it for everybody. There you go.
It's on its way. I'll share it with Graham.
Share it with Graham.
All right, Jim, thank you so much. That's going to do it for segment 1. We'll be right back with the Better on Draft podcast.